First 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook, but we're doing it from a different perspective because, as we shared, we're using the version that Edward Viljoen, who is the minister of the Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Rosa, California, put together, called The Science of Mind for Beginners, a simplified version in prose. And basically, if you are familiar with the Living Bible, how the Living Bible is a paraphrase of the Bible, he took The Science of Mind, the first 4 chapters, and did a paraphrase version to make it simple and all of that. And we have been talking about the last 2 Sundays, we talked about the different chapters, and today we're talking about the 3rd chapter, the chapter that is called What It Does, What It Does. And in that, I think it's something important that Ernest Holmes talks about is the fact that when we say that God is all there is, and we talk about the fact of God being all there is, that God is all creativity, all abundance, all love, all joy, all peace, all harmony, all of those things, all creativity, but yet in the midst of that, God, if you will, there's a place in which you will for an outlet for all of that to manifest itself, that outlet for all of it to come into the world, an outlet for it to be. And do you know what that outlet is? Me. Somebody said it, me. That outlet is you. That outlet is me. That we are the place, as a matter of fact, you hear people a lot of times say in Science of Mind, where God shows up in the world. We are that opportunity for that expression, that creativity, all of that is there. We are the place where it shows up. It shows up in us. It shows up as us. And the divine opportunity is for us to use our creativity. And he goes on to talk about those people that we would look at in our lives as being, if you will, creative, the artists and the dancers and the singers and all of that, who know that, who will tell you that in the midst of what it is that they do, that they feel some presence, they feel some energy, they feel something that is flowing through them, and they give way to that and they allow it to do what it does. And when it does what it does, it manifests in magnificent ways across the pages, across the stage, across the canvas, and all of those things. But not only is it in terms of those kinds of creative things that we think about, but every day, you and I are the place where God shows up. We are the face and the place where God shows up. And we have that opportunity to allow ourselves to be open to the expression of God, to be open to whatever way in which it expresses and manifests itself. And the way that we do that is that we allow ourselves to be divinely guided. We open ourselves, we make ourselves available and recognize that here we are. And while we may not have all of the answers in that moment, that when we allow ourselves to stay in that place, in that space, Whatever it is that we need, whatever it is that we are looking to express, whatever it is proper for the situation and the circumstance, when we get a hold of the fact that we are the divine expressing, it becomes available to us. It becomes available to us because it's there. It's there. We don't have to go looking for it. We just have to allow it to be. As we say, we have to make it welcome. But so often what we have done, we've made God so complex. We've made God so complex. We've made this whole process so complex. And I'd like to read something that from here, from this chapter, that is called, a section that's called A Riddle of Simplicity. And it says, he writes this: "It is a beautiful and true thought to realize that every person exists within the mighty mind of God. And therefore, each one of us has the same access to the intelligence of creation." And here's what I love. "The farmer has seen the heavenly host in the fields. The child has frolicked with God at play. The mother has clasped God to her breast. And the fond lover has seen God in the eyes of the beloved." We look too far away by making a riddle out of simplicity. We not have read the sermons written in stones, nor interpreted the light of love running through life. To return to a simple understanding of the divine is one of the first and most important things to do. We've made it so complicated. We've made it so complex. And I was talking the other day with someone about how you run around and you see people, encounter people who want to tell you with certainty what God hates and what God hates. You know, tell you that God hates this person, or God hates this group of people, or God hates, or God this or that, and all of that. And the thing that I'd say is, you know, who gave you the insight into what God hates? As a matter of fact, if we ultimately understand God is love, God is that expression of love. And as Meister Eckhart says, you know, that God, he says it in this way. And when he said it back in the 16th century, I believe, when he said it, he shocked a lot of people. But he said, "Why should I thank God for loving me when God can't help itself?" Because it's loving itself. God is love. If we are expressions of God, then God is loving us. And we have evidence of that love each and every day. Each and every day, as we take another breath, as we get up, as we're able to open our eyes, as we see one another, as we encounter things that are happening, we have the opportunity there to witness to the fact that God is expressing its love in and through and as us. And this chapter goes on to talk about, and you've heard me say that many times, about the impersonalness of God. And the impersonalness of God is really simply this. It's the fact that rather than God being anthropomorphic, which is just a fancy way of saying we make God have human-like qualities. And you know, the whole hate of God being one of those, and God being a jealous God, and God being, you know, a vengeful God and a wrathful God, and all of those kinds of things. That ultimately what we are talking about is a creative energy. We are talking about a love intelligence that is there, that is ultimately what we identify and call God, what we identify and feel as God expressing in us. And it doesn't play favorites. It doesn't play favorites. It is impersonal in the way that it's available to all, no matter who we are, no matter where we've been, no matter what we might identify or other people might identify us as. It's available to each and every one of us. And it's available to us in such a way that's so dynamic that he continues to ask the question over and over and over again: how much of God are we willing to allow to express through us? How much? Because often it is us who cut God off, in the sense that when we put limitations and we say we can't do this or we can't do that because I'm too old, or because I don't have the background, or I don't have the resources, or because I came from this, or because people told me that, all of those things are limiting God. And the fact of the matter is, over and over and over again, we have the evidence of the abundance of God, the infinite possibilities that are present in God. if you ever want to think about the universe, think about it in this way, how extravagant it is. We don't have just one tree. There are thousands of types of trees. And when you look at the trees, you can go out and as spring starts to assert itself again and go out and look in your yard and see the trees have not just a few leaves, but an abundance of leaves. There's not just one type of animal or insect. There are thousands upon thousands of animals and insects. There's infinite possibilities and infinite abundance in the universe. And so when we start limiting ourselves or trying even to limit God and say what God hates and what God doesn't like and all of those kinds of things, or what can happen or what's not possible, we are placing limits on God. And ultimately the question is, how much God are we willing to allow to express itself in and where we are and what's happening in our lives? I think about a few years ago when I had something that I had to put together, and it was a bookcase or a computer printer card. And when I got it out, and I thought about it in this, because I was thinking about the message and those things back then, and I was thinking, well, there's several ways that I can approach putting this together. I can, get the instructions out, and I can go instruction by instruction to put it together, or I could just, go ahead and kind of wing it and, probably have some parts left over, let this go. Or I can look at it and use my intuitive guidance to allow me to put it together. And so I say, well, I'm going to trust that there's an intelligence in the universe and intuitive guidance, and put it together, was able to construct it, and I didn't have parts left over. And if you want to see it, it's sitting there in the office now. It's still there. It's still functional, and it still does what it needs to do. Because ultimately, there is a guidance that is there, that's available to us, that helps us to know what to do in situations and circumstances where we're uncertain, that gives us comfort in those places, in those times when we might be troubled or need some assurance or those kinds of things. There is the presence that helps us to know that things are going to be all right. I remember years ago when it took me the longest to learn how to swim. And a part of that was because of my first experience or my first encounter with swimming. I went to, it was back then what was the Boys Club, and they, gave us some instructions about jumping into the water, and we were to get ourselves in a ball, and when we got, when we jumped in and grabbed our legs and go down, and then when we got there to let go. Well, I hadn't really been around water that much, and I was only probably about 7 years old or something like that, and when I jumped in, I was terrified. And while we were supposed to let go, I wouldn't let go. And I was there still in that ball, and I was rolling around in the water, and there I was, and right at that very moment when I thought, okay, this is it, because there were so many people in the pool, there was nobody observing what was going on with me, there was suddenly the sensation of a light, a gold light, that said, reach out, reach out. And I heard the voice very clearly say, reach out. And when I reached out, there my hand was, and it was the side of the pool. And I got it. And I got out that pool. But all through my life, ever since then, and a lot of times in situations and circumstances where, unforeseen things have started to happen or something like that, that same voice and that same light makes an appearance to say, do this, don't do that, go here, don't go there, trust this person, don't trust that person. And I understand that to be divine guidance. I understand that to be that presence and power that we talk about all the time manifesting itself, and people experience it in different ways. Some people hear voices, some people don't, some people have nudges, some people. But whatever it is, if we make ourselves open and available to it, and if we learn to trust it, and if we let it guide us through all that is happening, then we understand this life that we are talking about. We understand that it's available to us. We understand that it's open to us. We understand that it is happening through us and around us and in us. And that guidance is something that's more powerful than anything, even the text that we're talking about today, than reading that text or reading any other text or listening to what anybody else has to say. It's something that's available to us, that continues to whisper to us, that lets us know how loved and how precious we are. And it is that which I think Ernest Holmes is trying to put into words and to express to us, but ultimately it goes beyond words. It goes beyond words. It goes beyond any type of description. It ultimately becomes something that we have to learn how to feel, something that we have to learn how to experience, something that we have to let ourselves be open and available to us. I remember a number of years ago, I met a gentleman. He was quite elderly at that time, but he was still up and around and had all of his faculties and everything else that we would say and that kind of thing. But we got to talking, and he was somebody who I saw had a lot of insight into a lot of things. And so as we continued to talk, I said to him, you know, I really appreciate the wisdom that you're sharing with me and all of the things that we're talking about. And you know, there just seems to be something that is present here. And he said to me, he said, that's because I was one of Dr. Carver's boys. And I said, Dr. Carver's boys? He says, yes, George Washington Carver. He said, I was a student of his at Tuskegee Institute. And Dr. Carver taught us that the universe was God. And he taught us how to listen and to understand that it was God expressing through all of the things that we did. And as he said that, I started to think about a quote that was attributed to George Washington Carver, who said that he said that one day to God to show me the secrets of the universe. And God said, that's too complex, but I'll show you the secret of the peanut. And then you will understand. Then you will understand. And that's how he took his life, and that's what he did. And what my invitation is to you this morning, because I could go on and on and on talking about this subject, what it does, but my invitation to you, and I know many of you already in your lives are already expressing and experiencing it. But I'm challenging you to even up level the ways in which we allow God, because I'm including myself in this, God to express through us, the ways in which we let ourselves know on a daily and a constant basis that right as we say, nearer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, even closer than our breath, God is present. God is expressing. God is being. God is doing. God is showing up. God is who we are. God is everywhere. Everywhere. Even here and now as we breathe in and breathe out, we are experiencing God. I heard Cedric talk earlier about how the breath is the breath of the ages. It has always been present. And the same breath that the people that we admire, like Jesus and the Buddha and all of those, that same breath, those same molecules that they breathed in and breathed out, we are breathing in and breathing out today. What a miracle. You're a miracle. We are a miracle. And so it is. So it is.